Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and with the support of Omnovos, Canada's digital customer engagement company. Omnovos makes personalization easy by helping you connect with your customers, connect with your data, and connect with your systems. Learn how at www.realcustomerengagement.com. In this episode, I'm in Ottawa to meet Louis Bellemare, President and General Manager of Farm Boy Company and 2020 Golden Pencil recipient. We talk about the rich history of Farm Boy, the evolution of their unique in-store experience, assortment, merchandising, and marketing strategies ahead, and now in the COVID era, what, if anything, has changed in their strategy and approach. Next, I'm in Vancouver with my good friend, retail strategist David Ian Gray, talking about the state of the retail sector and the upcoming challenges and opportunities for retailers during holiday 2020. But first, let's check in with Jean-Louis from Farm Boy. Jean-Louis, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a real treat to be able to chat with you, if not meet you in person, but I'm so familiar with the Farm Boy brand. I grew up with it in Ottawa. I shopped the Maribel Road store, and as recently as this past weekend, I was in your store in London, Ontario. So it's a well-known store for me, and it's been such a story. So why don't we start there? Why don't we jump right in? I mean, talk about yourself and your background and the founding of Farm Boy. What was it, 1981 in Cornwall, 300 square foot store. What's that, almost 40 years ago? And then take us through kind of the major milestones of those 40 years. Like you've got, you've expanded, you have private equity investment, and now acquisition and a brave future. So take us in a kind of a brief tour of the history of time and yourself.
Okay, so I'll start from Cornwall days. So, like you just said, we were a 300 square foot store, opened in 1981, strictly produce. My wife and I, Colette, which was back then my girlfriend, are the ones that started this. And it was, our intentions was really I would do wholesale and she would do the retail in a small store that used to be an old bread outlet. And so my background is my father was in the produce business. He was a produce wholesaler. So I spent a lot of time on the markets and learning the business and liking the business a lot. So we started that when we were 18 years old. So that was like a warehouse, a 300 square foot warehouse, opened, December 3rd. And I remember it to this day. It was like 72 degrees Fahrenheit that day on a December day. And so getting ready to open at 9 o'clock, not sure if we'd have any customers whatsoever. We looked at the door. It was just a little small green door. And we look out the door, and sure enough, there was a bunch of people walking over, and we opened up. And honestly, it just went. It just went. People liked what we were offering. They liked the prices. They liked the service. So we stayed in that warehouse for about 3 years. We expanded. We got into dairy, and we got into a bit of grocery items, very little, very, very little. And then we added a deli, and then we added a meat department. So after that, we've outgrown this, and we felt like we had an opportunity to get a location where it is originally, it's still there today, on Sydney Street in Cornwall. And my brother Norman and myself became partners. So that took around 3 years. So 3 years, we decided, let's go, and we were going to open up together, become partners, because Norman had a lot of the same background, obviously. Was a very good entrepreneur, knew a lot around marketing and just a strong desire to build something together. So we formed our partnership and we worked it. And that store expanded several times. And when we took it, it was 5,000 square feet. And today I would say it's probably around 26,000 of retail space. And along the way there, we integrated in-store bakery. We had brought in, an expanded meat department, and then started to introduce some meal solutions, which back in the 80s, that was very innovative. We were doing the fried chicken and the potato wedges and all of that stuff in the 80s. And it was like taking off like just brush fire. It was really, really successful. So we just grew that store and really what I feel is an extremely, very, very strong, success story for a small town like Cornwall of 45,000. Then we said, we need to try to go bigger on this, and we need to try to expand to store number 2. So that was a big decision, and that took like 10 years from the day I had opened in 1991. So we opened up in 1992. We opened up in Orleans, Ottawa, which was east of Ottawa, and the reason we chose Orleans is because we had a French background, and Cornwall was like pretty French, is close to the Quebec border. So we said, let's go to Orleans. And we feel like that market would be a little more comparable to Cornwall. So we chose that. We opened that up in October. And that was a tough grind. But by March, April, we started to see the sales climb and people reacting. And it was very, very positive. It was very positive. And, the volume grew. I know that when we had started, we were doing roughly around $130,000 a week. And, eventually we got that store up to $450,000 a week. And we just kept grinding it. So then we felt, obviously you're building your confidence. And we felt that we can open up some more in Ottawa. So the third one was Nepean. So the one that you supported over the years.
Yeah, Maryville Road. Yeah,
that's correct. And that was our biggest. That was quite a big deal when we took that one on. And, again, the same concept of, just the same departments, the same type of philosophy, great customer service, bring the customers great product and make sure that, give them great value and just keep driving it. And it was successful. It was very successful, actually, from day one on Maryville. And just to add to that, too, by that time, we had brought in our third brother, which is Daniel. Daniel came into the business roughly around 10 years in. And when we opened up Nepean, I remember it like it was yesterday, Daniel speaks 5 languages fluently, and he made a speech in Italian. And it was huge over there because there was a big Italian population. So it really went over really well. I still remember it and really, really proud of that, actually. So we ran that Nepean store, and then from there we opened up a store in Canada. And then from Canada, we went down to Montreal Road. So that brought us up to a total of 5 stores by roughly 1997. And what was interesting then is that's when we really, we got challenged. We found out what it was to go from 1 store to 2, but to go from 2 to 5, that's a big, big hike. And we ran into some serious challenges there where we were losing money as a company, and it really pushed us to have to learn and get systems in place to run those. So along the way, we were very fortunate, and we hired some really smart and good people. One of them, they're all still with us. One of them is Donnie Melito, and Donnie's been with the company now for over probably 25 years. Sean Linton, that came in to help us. And people like that, they came in and they brought in systems. They helped us build systems, because one of the things people need to know is when you're running a fresh business, if you have great programs for ordering, sales ratios, and so on and so forth, you're buying, you are going to fail miserably. It's a big, big piece of scaling fresh, is you need systems that are going to give you the right information to make the right decision. Do you buy 300 cases of romaine lettuce, or do you buy 600 cases? A big difference, right? And so we had to put those systems in place. So we stopped our growth. We stopped our growth in 1997 and said, we're going to build these systems, get the right team of people with us, and then we'll look at where we stand. And that took us up to 2003. But by 2003, when we decided we were going to open up store number 6, we were back on the roll. We were rolling big volume, very profitable. The systems were working. We were getting the right people in the right place. And, we had some very, very smart people helping us grow this business. Because one of the things that me and my brother Norman always believed in is spend as much as you can on people. Get the smartest people you can afford all the time. That's how you're going to grow. And to this day, we still roll that way. And it's been a big, big part of our success. It was to hire smart people and let them do their jobs. And it paid dividends for us. So from 2003 to 2009, we just kept expanding that point. We were up to 9 stores. And in 2009 is when we brought in Jeff York into our organization. And the reason we wanted to bring Jeff into the organization is that we wanted him to help us continue to grow. But more importantly, I had 2 brothers that were older than I was they were thinking about retiring and selling out their shares. And so Jeff was brought in to help us grow the company and get us into a position where we can, bring in another partner, and my brothers Norman and Daniel will be able to retire. So we did just that. So by 2012, that brought us to the Berkshire partners, which are out of Boston. And they were just excellent partners to be with.
I think you're being humble in your description of the growth, but I think one of the keys to your success, in addition to what you're describing, is the philosophy of hiring strong people is consistency. Like the format is a very consistent format. You don't seem to be tempted to go in a lot of different directions.
No,
is my observation over the.
It's a good observation, Michael, and I can tell you that that's something that is very near and dear to my heart. Is that we are all about the food, and we want to make sure that we continue to do that and do that well. Mm-hmm. Just to continue quickly with the Berkshire. So we also Jeff and I stayed, obviously, and ran the company together with Berkshire. And like I said, they were excellent partners because what they had is a heck of a Rolodex on getting people on your board. So they got, the ex-president of Trader Joe's on our board, which was just an amazing person to work with, Doug Roch, which I learned so much from. And then they got another guy from Panera, because we were at that point really growing our restaurant side of our business. Yeah. Panera, this guy, John, he had opened up 150 stores in one year. It's just kind of embarrassing when you're telling, well, we're going to do 3 this year. You're like, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, really.
So, but Berkshire's biggest strength was their connections with people. They're an extremely humble group of smart people that were very, very supportive and just helped us make, the right calls along the way. But, like everything with private equities is there's always an exit in mind, right? They typically keep companies between 3 to 7 years. And we knew that. We knew that was going to happen. And, eventually they told us, we think the timing's right for this. And we agreed, we were very supportive of them as they were supportive of us. So, at that point, we decided we would start to look for a partner, and they were incredibly supportive to say, if we don't have the right partner, guys, they'd say this to me and Jeff all the time, we don't have to do a deal, and they were true to that right to the end, and so because we had a lot of private equities interested in reloading, it was very, very simple to bring them to the table, and they had them. But, they brought us to Empire, and we really felt that Empire was the right partner for us. And that's why we went ahead and moved on with Empire. So that's kind of like the quick 40 years here.
What a journey. What a journey. Now, talk about your role at our Farm Boy. I had the pleasure of interviewing Jeff on the stage, and actually we went to high school together. Yeah, he told me that. I always throw that out because he's famous, so I just add that. But yeah, so I know Jeff, and initially you were co-CEOs, but I understand that's evolved lately. So tell us about how the two of you work together, and what do you do, and what does he do?
Sure. So first of all, Jeff and I are very, very close. We talk pretty much every single day, and we share ideas pretty much every single day. And he's still a board member he's still a partner. He still advises. He still sits in the senior management meetings. He's still very involved in the decision-making with us. We include him in everything. And but what happened now, Michael, is the business has changed, right? When we got this partner in Empire, this is no longer for sale. It's now here to be grown and to be, to just expand it and to make it better. And if you back up from the Berkshire days, a lot of that, part of that being owned by a private equity is, your next exit. So Jeff's role changed. It changed a lot. Like, if you back up 5-6 years ago, Jeff was responsible for real estate, the banking, the partners, and all of that stuff, which Jeff is awesome at, right? And really, really strong in all of those areas. And so what happens is once we have this deal with Empire, some of these pieces fall off, right? They no longer need it. And, and even in real estate, and Jeff is still responsible for the Farm Boy real estate. He lays out the roadmap, but with the Sobeys people, and they have big teams to do that as well. So he's working with them. So it quickly became obvious to Jeff and I both that, listen, like the two of us here in a lot of ways is an overkill. I've always been more on the side of the operations, which I continue to do, but Jeff's skill set is very much on, how to bring synergies from Empire to Farm Boy, but not only Empire to Farm Boy, but how does Farm Boy bring synergies to Empire as well? And really strong at seeing those things and identifying those things. So he can become more the bridge for both sides. And I think that'll benefit Farm Boy and Empire way more than if he was just sitting on the farm boy side and waiting for things. So it's really working out well. I mean, the COVID situation obviously has held back a lot of things. You can't have, these meetings in the office anymore, and it's changed a lot. But we've started this now, for the last 4 or 5 months, and I feel like it's just a little more focused on farm boy, and it's a little more focused on an agenda now. So we have more of a specific role each, and really at the end of the day, my role hasn't changed a lot. It's about the operations. For me, it's always about protecting the concept, protecting the brand, and making sure that we stay true to it's all about the food. And, because as we continue to grow our concept, our models are getting bigger. We just did a store last week in Newmarket that we opened up Thursday, which is 32,000 square feet, the biggest farm boy yet. So, it's interesting when you're opening up these bigger stores, which I believe is the right thing to do. But you can't make them feel big. You have to make them feel like people have come used to shopping in a farm boy. So it has to evolve, but it has to evolve the farm boy way. And, I see that role very much as my role, and, keeping the team, very focused on that.
I had that observation. I was in your Leaside store a couple of months ago, which is a big store. I think that probably was the biggest store before Newmarket, and it felt familiar. But the size and scale, particularly after so many years shopping at Marylville Road and then Evans Road, which was your first Toronto one, was just different. I remember talking to Jeff and congratulating him on the Empire deal, and I said, I know Michael Medline. He was the chair of the Retail Council of Canada board when I was at Retail Council of Canada, so we got to know each other, and I thought, what a great match. Like, I thought the two would get along so well, both professionally and personally. Michael Medline said very famously, "We won't screw this up." It's not something you often hear from a CEO who just bought a company. Yeah. And to me, it really highlighted this unique culture relationship that you have. Almost, this fan base, almost fandom. How did you develop that? Is it anchored in that kind of consistency and just day-to-day delivering of quality? Like, how did you get that kind of loyalty with your customers? You don't have a loyalty program, you don't have all those things, but
we have a ton of respect for our customers. That we have. And I believe, at the end of the day, we're all selling the same product, right? You're selling an iceberg lettuce, whether I'm selling it or somebody else is selling it. At the end of the day, it's an iceberg lettuce. You want yours to be fresher, you want a maybe better price, but it's always going to be on how you present it, but more importantly, how the customer is served when they're in your store. And I believe our customer service has been a big, big piece of the Farm Boy success story. We have an incredible team of people that blows me away every day of how committed they are to give exceptional customer service. And as we grow, it gets more difficult, but I'm always so impressed to see how we're able to hold on to a lot of that. We have people like Yvon Belair, who is our VP of operations. Yvon's been with Farm Boy for 39 years. He gets culture. He gets what customer service is all about. He understands if a store feels right or doesn't. And it's so, so important that our people continue to understand that. But more importantly, that when the customer comes in, that they feel at home at a Farm Boy. And it's hard to pin that. You can't say, well, our products are better or cheaper or, this or we do that. At the end of the day, if I had to pin it on one thing, Michael, I would say that our customer service and our customer respect has been second to none for 39 years. And we continue to strive extremely hard to keep pushing that and pushing that. And I would pin it on that.
Let me take you back to the before time. So before COVID, if we can remember those days.
Although it feels like years ago, right? It's been unreal long.
I know. And as you sat in 2019, the end of 2019, you and Jeff and the team thought about strategies. So clearly your expansion, you've got the benefit of different choices around real estate. So we no need to talk about that because that's a kind of a self-evident. Yeah. But as you thought about what you would do to the store to make and to continue to make it relevant, how did you think about brand strategy, the in-store experience? I mean, there's lots of, Jeff and I talked about, there's a lot of technology coming into the stores. You're a leader in the grocerant, great pizza ovens and all those things. It's a terrible phrase, but it's still kind of fun to say. So anyway, take me back to that kind of 2019. You're thinking in kind of a couple, 3 years, you're going to expand your real estate. But what were you thinking about the store and the store experience? And then where I'm going with this is, okay, now we're into COVID, the COVID era, however that lasts, and what's changed in your mind for the COVID era. So give me those two kind of perspectives.
So that's a very good question. And it's very interesting because I look at it in 2019, we wrote a 5-year plan, a very, very extensive 5-year plan. It was written by somebody who retired just in March, the day before the COVID officially announced. And I said, man, that guy is strategic. Anyway, he had written an exceptional 5-year plan for us. And at the end of the day, the 5-year plan was very, very focused on our biggest mandate is to open stores, is to double the size of the company in 5 years, which is a very, very tall order, but very doable in our view. We have a belief, that we feel that we can do X amount of stores per year. We want to stay true to that because we never want to disrupt the customer experience. But when we look at what we had on the plate for 2019 is that restaurant or grocerants that you referred to was a very, very big part of our business. And so that was a major, major curveball in March when everything was shutting down. We were shutting down these eating areas, these sitting areas, like everybody else, right? No different than anyone else. But it was a big part of our expansion. And so we got going like immediately on trying to see what does that look like? How do we reinvent? And imagine like the first few weeks and even months, you're kind of thinking, it's going to go back. Eventually this is going to get better. We're going to figure this out and we're going to go back. And then as it kept going, like we're really starting to say, no, we have to really change the way we're thinking. And if it does go back, then so be it. That'll be easy to manage. What's not so easy to manage is when you think something's going to go back to the old way and it doesn't. Then you're left out in the middle doing nothing. So we immediately got the team focused on how we can take that part of the business and make it relevant for not only COVID, but for post-COVID. And I think we've done a great job, and I'll get into that. But just before I just jump in onto the restaurant side, I think it's very important that everyone understands that Farm Boy along the way has grown and has added a lot of departments and items. But we are strong believers that you can never leave what you've done go down. Every department still has to evolve, and it has to go up. It doesn't have to go up a lot. Like if you're doing a great, great job in produce, for example, which Farm Boy has done a pretty good job, I would say, over the last 39 years. Yep. Could never, it's hard to reinvent produce. It's a harder department to reinvent, but you can make it better. You can always make it better. And so we're great believers that every department has to be a little better and a little more relevant every year. So we've done that along the way, and I'm comfortable that we will continue to do that. We're working on things right now in certain departments here that have been around forever that we think are going to be really, really good, and they're going to be coming in the coming months. Okay, but then when you go into restaurant, that whole side of the restaurant, that's just a monster of opportunities, challenges, all kinds of those words that you want to use because people want options, and you have to be able to figure out how to bring it to them. But it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3. So how do you do that now in a completely new environment? So these salad bars and hot bars that we were picking up like tremendous momentum with these things, it all went away. Yeah. So now if people that will go to new market will see that we've reinvented that. And I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe we're the first, because everywhere I've been and I've seen a lot of competitors of late, they have not moved an inch on this. They're waiting for, I'm not sure what they're waiting for. So they're putting a bit of food in their hot bars or salad bars and packaged, but they haven't really changed anything. So what we've done is we've made it an island in the middle in New Market where you are fully served. You're fully served the product and in very, very safe, clean environment. So let's say now in a year or 2 years or whatever, if ever people want to go back to self-serve, these models that we've built are very, very flexible to do that. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. The other thing we've done is our chefs are working very, very diligently and very, very hard at finding ways to package and give more options as a grab and go. I believe the grab and go market has gone up tremendously and will continue to go up tremendously. So we're investing hard on that side as a grab and go, more options of grab and goes. We're doing a lot of these chef meals, like we call them date night, and they've been a huge success where it's a dinner for two. And we've launched now a dinner for four. And people are hopping onto this stuff like unreal because they're looking for options, right? What do I do on Friday night? I don't want to go to the restaurant because I don't feel safe there yet. So we're trying to fill those options for the customers and honestly, hopefully make life a little better. That's what we're trying to do. So we are really, really going hard and fast at trying to reinvent chef as per, what we're living today. And hopefully that'll bring us post-COVID and make us, more relevant. And one of the things that you learn when you go through these difficult times, and, everybody's going through these, is you typically come out, if you go and if you're a hard worker and you're a digger, you'll come out of this and you'll learn a lot. And some things will be better when you're finished all of this, and I believe that. And we've been challenged many, many times in 39 years, nothing to the extent of COVID-19, but trust me, we've been challenged many, many times, and we had to figure it out. And you come out and you say, okay, we learned a lot. Let's never do that again. Or let's make sure we do this more, and that's how you learn business.
Well, one of the challenges I wanted to talk about specifically, last couple of questions, is in new product development. And I've talked to a lot of retailers and they say, listen, maintaining existing relationships has been okay in the COVID era. That works fine, the Zoom calls or whatever. Yeah. But the ongoing discovery of new and innovative products, whether it's here in Canada or around the world, there's not trade shows or virtual. Yeah. How are you thinking about your very strong private label brands and very strong assortment. But in the COVID era, and this could be, 18, 24 months or whatever the COVID era is, how are you thinking about this discovery process and doing that differently moving forward?
Okay. So first of all, like our systems our team is structured in two different ways. Okay. So we have what we call product development. So that would be all the value-added items. So let's say you go to our meat department and you see these Farm Boy chicken wings that are, marinated with a certain type of sauce. That's on the product development side. And we do that with our central commissary. We have a central kitchen where all the chefs work and they create and they build these things. And that is a big, big priority for Farm Boy, huge priority. We want to continue to add a lot of those offerings. So I don't see a lot of change on that side. Okay, I think
that's your in-house innovation.
Yes, exactly. The in-house innovation has never stopped, and will continue to move forward. On the side of private label, when you're talking about a third party, that's a little more complicated, right? So we have a separate team there that work with different suppliers, and one of the approaches we're really been pushing hard in the last year, and more than a year, but call it in the last couple of years, is to try to be more local. We're trying to find, we had a lot of these American partners that were great partners, but, they're far away. And sometimes you realize that close to home, you have somebody that could do the same thing. So in the last couple of years, we've done a tremendous job in cleaning that up and saying, let's work with this supplier. We can have somebody local. We can work with them. They work with us. And it's just a better relationship. It's a closer relationship, literally, right? So we have not been challenged, Michael, in terms of getting more and more suppliers to the table. So, I think that people have done an exceptional job. Like, I think Farm Boy's done a great job through COVID-19. And honestly, I really feel like all our competitors have. Everybody's, they've rolled up their sleeves and dove in really, really hard. And that includes our suppliers. Some were very, very challenged. You think of people like Cargill and stuff like that, but they rebound really quickly, which is really amazing. And let's hope that we can keep it going. But, I really commend everyone that has gone through this terrible event and how they've rolled up their sleeves and worked through it. So I would say that our suppliers, some of them more challenged than others, have been very resilient, and they've come out of this, and we continue. Like, we probably have in the next couple months another 100 SKUs coming in private label of great products. So you can see that it's not slowed us down, not at all. And I think that I give those credits to our team, and that are just fighting hard and going out there and going to meet people, and they're doing it safely, and they're doing all the right protocols. But we have not stopped, and our suppliers are willing to keep going. And so I don't see a big challenge saying, in the next 2 years, I think this is going to be a lot tougher. And it is, honestly, I'm not seeing it right now. I just see a bunch of motivated people that want to continue to bring great products to our stores.
Well, you've got such a transformation happening, because I talk to a lot of the makers on my other podcast, The Food Professor, that I host with Sylvain Charlebois, and they are themselves shifting from, they were supplying restaurants, and they're now shifting how they think about and where that demand is coming from themselves. Yeah. And I guess the hallmark of this local approach, practically in the COVID era, is you've got more flexibility. I mean, just the product and the vendor is just physically, as you said, closer.
Yes.
So you can have that 1 + 1 = 3 kind of.
That's right, because we're helping them as well, right? Like, we're coaching them along the way, and we're kind of holding each other's hand, and that's what we need to do right now. This is what this event has brought, and that's why I feel like there's always a lot of good that come from these things.
It's a pretty important role, right, for Canadian grocers to help build that domestic expertise, right? Absolutely. You've got that unique capability. Okay, last question. We talked about the changes in COVID with the great acceleration, and one of the things that certainly accelerated is online and e-commerce. Now, you're part of the Voila experience. I had the pleasure of interviewing Sarah Joyce for the Food Professor. It's a great interview. I've done the service, and I've got my Farm Boy products delivered to the home. Now that's right now GTA, and in the future that'll be somewhere else. How do you think about online from your perspective, from a broader perspective? It's not available in Ottawa yet, for example. The Voila is not there. Are you thinking about how are you thinking about online as a meeting the demand, or just it's beyond the core, and you're just going to phase that in?
That's a very good question again. So first of all, I would say, Farm Boy, it's always been about the store experience, and that's not going to change. It's not going to change. Right. Our focus is about the store experience. On the side of online, we're really excited to have our products on Voila. I had the opportunity to visit the plant in London in November, which I was absolutely blown away. I think Voila platform is by far the best in Canada. By far. Okay, so if the Farm Boy products are available on Voila, I feel that we have ourselves very well covered from that perspective. Voila will be in the markets where we're not. Let's face it, we don't have a ton of stores in the GTA. They are going to be a great partner to get our products known and out there before we get our stores out into the new areas. So there's in my view, there is no better system or better online business that will be Voila. What they're offering is second to none. And Sarah's done an amazing job on putting that together. And she's gotten tremendous support by Michael and the team there. And I'm at firsthand, it is one heck of an operation. And once they get going with this, it's going to be very impressive. So for me, in a lot of ways, I feel comforted that I have this as our partner. This is our partner. To me, the best in Canada. Okay, I'm covered there. Our job, let's drive an exceptional customer experience when they come into our stores. It's more important today, Michael, more important today than ever. That's what I believe, and that's what I'm going to drive.
Well, it's been such a treat talking with you over the history of Farm Boy, but what continues to strike me is that kind of just that sticking to that kind of philosophy, culture that has been so important in the success of your organization and continues to be. And it really kind of circles back to Michael Medline's, we won't screw this up, because you've really really got something special. So congratulations on your success, and I wish you much continued success, and thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast.
Michael, and the same to you, and you're doing a great job with what you're doing as well. It's great that you're able to bring out these stories to people, and it's very interesting, and you're really good at it. So thanks for what you do.
This is Steve Dennis, and I'm here to tell you retail isn't dead, boring retail is. As a C-level executive at 2 Fortune 500 companies, keynote speaker, and strategic advisor to dozens of retail, consumer, and technology brands, I help organizations accelerate their growth. I'm also the author of the new best-selling book, Remarkable Retail: How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Digital Disruption. Join me and my co-host, Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast, as we use my 8 Essentials of Remarkable Retail framework to explore modern retail before, during, and after the COVID-19 crisis.
Each and every week, Steve and I, along with special guests including top retailers and industry thought leaders, will explore the latest events and work to understand the lessons of the past and present to craft strategies for the future.
So please join us each and every week for a lively and interactive journey to Remarkable Retail, debuting September 29th on Apple, Spotify, or any of the major platforms wherever you enjoy your podcast today.
David, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Mike. Thanks for having me on. And it's a lot's happened in the industry since our go-around last holiday.
Yeah, no question. So I should actually say welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. And you and I have had a lot of conversations on mic, off mic, in a lot of different cities and a lot of different places, over a lot of different types of beverages. So it's a real treat to have you back on the podcast. A lot, as you said, has happened since the last time we talked about one of our favorite subjects together, holiday. But let's for the folks who perhaps didn't have a chance to listen to that episode or may not have seen you in the multiple on-air appearances or know you from your long time involvement in retail. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, Dig 360, and what you specialize in and what your focus is.
Somewhat through another colleague of ours, Jim Okamura, who's now at McMillan Doolittle in Chicago doing great stuff. I kind of morphed from being at corporate oil and gas at Imperial Oil with a little windy path over to retail in the late 90s. And I really blame Jim, but I really got enamored with retail. And for me, so I started a firm back then with retail being the target, which evolved over time into direct to consumer as well and people who sell into retail. But it really was a place for me to play around an intersection of several interests. And the firm is Dig 360, and I'll just touch on that in a moment. But the work has always been around an intersection of anticipating change. That's always been of interest to me. Subsequent to that is the notion of transformations, evolution and transformation and adaptation. My bias traditionally has been around customer experience and customer strategies. So retail from the late 90s onward has been a really kind of rich playground for that. And so we've helped a lot of primarily Canadian founders, owners, CEOs of mostly specialty chains, but pretty significant ones in this country. One of the things I don't talk about very much, but it's actually maybe my biggest interest is in exploring interesting collaborations with other very smart people. And some of those have resulted in folks joining Dig 360. Our most recent is Rick Bahonis, who was the founder and longtime CEO of Urban Barn. And he's looking at interesting evolutions in physical retail. But we've also, over time really enjoyed teaming up with people with shared values that may not want to be as card carrying and business building on the inside, but still want to play on various projects. And you and I still need to team up on one of these, but that really gives me a lot of pleasure is when there's people who want to explore advisory and change, and we can create a sandbox for that.
Let's step back a bit to the before time, as I call it, which is before COVID. Think back, if you can imagine 7-8 months ago, late 2019, early 2020, when all this was, in early 2020, this was going to be a supply chain issue. What were in your mind, the key drivers when you talk to your clients about adapting to some pretty dramatic changes that were happening in retail? When you sat down with them and said, listen, I don't know if there's a formula for success, but we can certainly talk about the changes that are happening and how to shape strategy around that. What did that conversation look like?
Well, just from our bias, and I've mentioned up top, an interest in customer strategy and customer experience. We hear that the word customer experience is thrown around a lot. retail organizations are incredibly proficient at trying to be lean, at being lean. They're run by operators, people who get a lot of stuff done, but it's a linear process. And what happens over time is cultures build up where the internal day-to-day is more about how we do things around here, the internal process. And so even though people will pay lip service to customers, it's really, how do we just keep feeding our own processes? And in some cases, if they do deviate from that, it's really more of a product-centric discussion. From our point of view, a lot of it leading up before COVID was trying to get executives to really explore where they wanted to be on a continuum to customer centricity, and at least be honest with themselves, where they were on that continuum. If they did decide, hey, they need to really move out of their own internal processes and start to build in new ways for customers, we would then help them with that. So we were focused there, but I wouldn't say that was right for everyone. It depended on the organization. What I would say is that you and many other observers, I would think, nailed it the last few years. The speed of modernization for legacy retail was really moving at far too slow a pace. And modernization really meaning breaking down internal silos and building something that was taking the best of physical retail, the best of online, and putting it together in a new way. That was involving a lot of change on the inside. And I think a lot of the legacy guys were struggling with it. That move, I don't want to call it omni anymore, Mike. It's just retail, right?
Yeah.
But that change was real. But I think a lot of leaders and organizations, and often just because they're vested with complex incumbent systems and cultures, they were really having trouble doing more than incremental change. And I might add, I hope everyone kind of is past the notion that physical retail's dead. I never bought into that. That was a myth. Now, the future, the ratio of online to store sales as far as units sold and dollars sold, that's all changing.
Yeah, I think you and I would agree the role in some ways changes. Now, whether that's dark store strategies, maybe that's stores as media, as some have described them. Maybe that's this what I've been calling the safety valve of e-commerce, which is curbside and in-store pickup and returns. But the characteristics change. But there's no question, physical retail in some way, shape, or form is a critical component. I mean, I used to point, I don't know if I can still point there, when we were talking before COVID, the number of digital first native brands that were opening stores, right? The Allbirds, Amazon, for goodness sakes.
Mike, that was, and you, for your listeners, they may not know, you the last number of years led a really terrific tour of New York, Manhattan retail during the NRF show. We would go, you would take us to various concepts that were brands going physical. And I think what we would see often is there's part of it's generational. Like a lot of those companies were founded by younger people. I'm being a little generic with that description, but by and large, and who were kind of starting with a whole new way of thinking about moving product. They weren't trying.
Well, they certainly weren't. I would agree that regarding what age they were, they seem to not be encumbered by previous models.
Yeah, and that's fun, right?
When you talk to them, they think completely differently.
Anyone who's never done it oversimplifies it. To do even average performance retail takes amazing talent, and to do exceptional retail is just beyond the pale. I just have so much respect for people who do it. But if we can take the best of both, I think the ultimate outcome here is you're getting that blend of how does digital work, and it's not just e-com. It's also how do you use your digital properties in an optimal way, but without thinking about your channels. It's more thinking about customers and how do they want to interact. And Mike, you just nailed it. That whole notion of buy online, pick up in store, or blending those behaviors, big wins come from that. But to make that happen in a way that myself as a shopper really feel it's seamless and just naturally solid all the way through takes a lot of effort and a lot of change behind the scenes.
Well, it's a lot of great operators, a lot of change management, and you got to have that respect for the unit economics, which isn't always in your favor. When you and I are in the media, I sometimes like to bring up, I hear you do it as well, don't forget about there's products that come back. Reverse logistics.
Yeah, the reverse supply chain gets underestimated. And by the way, so we never focused deeply on supply chain at Dig 360. And I guess a few years ago, I started getting quite interested in it. If everyone was focusing on store of the future, but at some point you're getting diminishing returns of that. I think supply chain of the future is next up. And there's guys out there like Gary Newbury who and there's a lot of good Canadian talent. I mean, I think in terms of Canada, there's huge supply chain struggles all the time in terms of doing that profitably. But I think the next stage then is thinking supply chain of the future and how that supply chain extends right to the customer at the end. And thinking like that in a business is very different than the departmental siloed approach that forever has been the case.
Part of this discussion is a great segue into my next question or line of inquiry. You've got now this acceleration. E-commerce now is a much bigger thing than it was 7 months ago, which has a lot of implications. For example, now that it's a bigger piece of the business, the unit economics matter even more. When it's a couple of percentage and you're losing money on it, that's one thing. When it's 10 or 12%, that becomes meaningful. I wanted to get your insights or thoughts around 3 changes. And maybe this is a big ask because we're only 7 months into this COVID era. But, what changes do you think or perceive, even at this early juncture, from a consumer perspective, will stick?
Well, I'm chuckling a little bit. If this was a video cast, you'd see a big smile on my face because you and I did touch on this. I will provide an answer to that because you're asking the question, but my first response is to say I'm very reluctant to predict anything. And it's not a cop-out, actually. It's actually a very thoughtful position I'm taking when I say that. I think we're living through what is a textbook definition of chaos theory. And without using that in its sort of pejorative jargon, hey, everything's chaotic. But the idea that we're in especially in the consumer world, we are today in an incredibly complex system that right now is rife with variability. And it was already a little bit unstable anyway because of all the things we were talking about. But with the pandemic and the response, everything's up for grabs. And when you're in that level of uncertainty and unpredictability, there's a presumption and a question like that we're now out of it and now what's going to stick. But my point of view is I would think at least until the end of first quarter 2021, and now I'm seeing health authorities talk about a whole year 2021, where things are still going to be in flux. All we can talk about is the here and now. I think because there's so many unknowns that are yet to play out, we're reacting not only to what we've seen to date, but there's going to be more unknowns. There's going to be new innovations happening in society and with brands almost in real time, and there's going to be health reactions and incidents that are going to occur that I can't predict yet. We are still formulating our long-run response. And I think what's really important, I'm not just saying that to beer talk. I think if you're a business leader or a political leader, you need to be thinking about not finding your straight line path again, your linear system getting organized again. Okay, what are we going to do about it? I think you have to start thinking deeply about a range of possible scenarios that can all play out, get better at articulating those and putting thought behind them, and then thinking about how do we react to those if they start to emerge, and how do we do better at that reaction than our competitors do.
I think it's such a compelling point. You and I were talking off mic about before we hit the record button about organizations and I think executives I'm talking to is how do I transform my organization into being an operations prediction machine into being a responsive organic company, because I can't predict the future anymore. And the best technology, AI, doesn't work when you've got such different outcomes potentially with little shocks, big shocks, and this COVID thing. So I think that nimbleness will be the hallmark of organizations that thrive. As much as you still got to be a great operator, but how do you be nimble and be able to react to these circumstances?
Well, I agree, and I wish we kind of hit record on that because you had a couple of great examples, but they were kind of negative examples, and you may not want to share them in our discussion, in the live version. I think it's really hard what we're talking about. because retail, when you think about the sort of the best senior retail leaders, and I have the utmost respect for people in that sector. I just think they do so much with so little. But there's this drive to be linear. And as you say, and you look at all the metrics tend to be very linear metrics. It's, comp store sales. You're looking at, you'll reference, we'll talk about holiday shortly, but you referencing holiday, you look at last holiday and what items sold and that kind of, and then you tweak it for this holiday. The sector, by and large, has built its whole operational culture around what now is known as lean, but it's basically these straight line swim lanes, and you just keep doing it faster and better. And to do what you're talking about, what we're talking about on this discussion, that's going to require not just different thinking, but habits and behaviors. And organizations are going to be asked to make those shifts pretty quickly. And I think that's going to be, I don't think all are going to make that. Now, having said that.
Now, that being said.
Yeah, I will say, I'll give you credit for one in our discussions we've had, and it really resonated with me, and I'm going to take it. I think it was obvious that with the surge in e-com demand, especially around grocery or necessities, if you think back to April and May, there were a lot of first timers. And I think talking to any of our clients, I'm sure you found this too, a lot of them who were tracking it said they had a big lift. The e-com never made up for the store sales loss, though. I can't think of anyone, even Lulu, it didn't. But it did exceed expectations, and a lot of those buyers were first-timers. I think that'll continue, but you made the good point of saying anytime you get a surge of new users, new buyers, new experiencers, it'll settle down again, but you're going to have those who now adopt the new behaviors and the new path. So I think a safe one is the percentage of Canadians across various categories, especially grocery, because that was the door opener. I think we'll see a lift there that continues. Now, having said that, I think a lot of people ended up with very disappointing experiences vis-a-vis what they were led to, what they were being led to expect, which is online is perfect, in-store is imperfect. And I think people saw the reality, which is online isn't always perfect. I would imagine a household focus, a family focus that is incrementally much stronger. I wouldn't say it's at zero, but a big gain in general health and wellness. So whether it's about COVID, but I think people just being far more, I don't think we're ever going to step back. Talking to people from Hong Kong and Asia, when H1N1 and SARS went through, that was their kind of dress rehearsal for dealing with that stuff. And now today, things like masks during flu season, people just put them on. So, I think hand washing, I think there's a lot of things, and there's a whole healthcare subsector that can go alongside that. So I think that'll stick. Anything else, like right now we're saying, well, people aren't buying fashion, for example, or menswear is dead. But I don't know if it's dead. I don't know if suddenly there's a vaccine and then there's a big resurgence because of cheap space, cheap rents that may be available with all the change on real estate. Maybe there's a whole resurgence of head office, or maybe people say, no, we like working from home and we found better ways to do that. Or maybe it's a hybrid.
Or there could be, I think that could wind up being a hybrid, because I can see a world, and you and I have seen this over the course of our careers, where there's unexpected reaction. So I could see a place where people get tired of wearing casual wear and overreact, and formal becomes workwear, because everyone's just so tired of wearing, casual wear. This cultural response to like, enough of that. I'm going to just dress up. I don't feel like it. Like you could imagine a world where that happens, right? You can imagine a world where it doesn't, but you could easily imagine it swinging in both directions, right? And I just think it's so fascinating. I think your point is brilliant in as much as, listen, we're early on in the COVID era. Let's not make too many predictions. The phrase "this changes everything" is probably one of the more overused phrases of the past 7 months. Let's, though, transition to an interesting topic: Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday promotions. So my conversations with retailers, they talk about their concerns over constraints of capacities in stores and capacity delivery systems. You and I have talked before and on the podcast and in other places about the relative importance of, the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weather importance to consumers, and you've done some great work at Leger. What do you think? What are you thinking this year? I mean, it's a chaotic year in some ways. We haven't even had Prime Day yet. We got retailers who don't, are chasing supply versus demand. You got some who just desperately need a great holiday. Like, what a mixed bag. Where do you think it's going to shake out? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think there could be a blessing behind all this this year. We've tracked, and I don't know how much longer we'll keep tracking it, because I think Google's doing a good job of that now, but we were kind of filling a gap in the market. So we were tracking sort of the reality of Black Friday and holiday for a number of years, like going way back to 2010. And
you were on that like day 2.
Well, and we kind of had to be, because there was a lot of mythology back then about it, and about the percentage of people crossing. Back then, it was border crossing, right, for Black Friday. I mean, we're not going to have that. That'll be a change this year, but that was never as a percentage
for Black Friday, right? The whole impetus.
That was the
lineup.
That was a media play, though, Mike. Like, you could take a camera crew down to the border and catch all these people loading up at Target. But as a percentage of Canadian business, it wasn't much. It was border town mostly. But having said that, yeah, that'll be a change for this year. But I would say, I think Black Friday is very interesting. It definitely has plateaued, where, looking the last few years, it was about 50% of the Canadian public that would be engaged around Black Friday, and the other half wanted nothing to do with it. And there was a real correlation also with Boxing Day, right? It was pretty similar. Not every shopper is designed the same way. We're different, right? Some people love the hunt winners, other people hate it. Some people love Black Friday and Boxing Day and all that kind of deal seeking, and others are just really turned off by it. So I think, forget this year for a moment, just the trend was about 50-50, and a lot of that participant set was really younger. And I think people know that deep down, right? You kind of know it's the young person sport to hit the malls. It's a social thing. And a lot of it was in store, but we would see at Black Friday a push on e-com. And I'm just saying that to set the scene. So a couple of the problems that we were seeing from the shopper point of view was that, sort of e-com was getting used, online was getting used for those peak moments, particularly Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But there's a lot of disappointment. And the disappointment was because our systems weren't really set up to meet that volume of demand. So within retail, there was a lot more, brands, there was more mistakes made in packing the boxes, just because they're just being crunched. And then between Canada Post, and forget the strike year, that we can forget that, but just generally FedEx, Canada Post, being able to get things delivered on time accurately was a real struggle. And so it was a great window on what could be if that volume of demand was happening on a regular basis, which was, we weren't ready for it.
Right,
so
right. Even
this year, so the reason I say that is, even if this year there's a surge in online demand because we're not able to go back in store, maybe there's, and we don't know what's going to happen, right? By the time we hit Black Friday, we may be in a lockdown again in some provinces. We just don't know. So if the answer is online, maybe, but there's our survey was showing quite a dissatisfaction amongst, maybe it was around a third of the shoppers being disappointed with timeliness or accuracy issues. That's one thing I'll comment on. From the retailer's point of view, what we were hearing and what we could see from the data, and Google was doing, anyone listening, just go talk to your Google reps, because they have some really good data on this. Instead of thinking about Black Friday, think about the whole holiday season as a campaign. And you and I have talked about this.
Yeah, the marathon, not the race.
That's right. And in fact, I don't know if you coined that, or it might have been our friends over at Google Canada, but it is a marathon. But within that marathon, it's not a steady pace.
Yeah,
what was really hard on retail was knowing which day was going to be a spike in which product category. And they were finding their predictive analytics, whatever you want to use, whether it was intuition or they actually had some algorithms. They were really struggling with that. It was really hard to manage it. And most retailers I spoke to really realized they created a monster in Black Friday. We got to the point where it came out of the States. We didn't start that in Canada. That was the U.S. post financial collapse ordering their Canadian divisions to do these sales desperately. And then everyone had to play the game. But generally speaking, it's not a good moneymaker. And you're blowing out inventory before you have a chance to see what you can sell it at before holiday. Boxing Day makes way more sense. But we are cannibalizing that to some degree.
You would agree, though, as a customer focused, that if you can suddenly get 50% of people thinking about shopping on a holiday, there must be an appetite for it. In other words, it's very hard to create a retail event from the ground up if there's no appetite for it. But what my observation is that Canadians were looking for an event that was more gift oriented, and it's hard to get 50% of people to agree on anything, let alone they all want to go shopping on one weekend. So I worry sometimes that we just be careful what we wish for with if we don't like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because these things, they kick off the season like we never were able to. I remember in my past when I was at Hudson's Bay, we were pining for that first snowfall or the first frost to say to the customers would wake up and go, oh, yeah, that's right, it's Christmas is around the corner. So I always think,
I'll give you that. I will give you that, but I would argue, and I haven't seen this data, so this would be an interesting study. But going back, say, 20 years, looking at not the sales, but the gross margin brought in from, say, November 15th to the end of December. I don't know if I can't say it's much different today, but what's happened is we're pushing it into a moment. But you're right in that every year the stress would be, when's it going to start? And now at least we have some predictability on it. But there's two things I'll share from our data with Leger the last few years. One is more and more people are seeing and buying early on in November, and certainly like the advertising starting in late October had been. We'll see what happens this year, but it was starting late October. The focus was still on that weekend. It wasn't Black Friday per se. It was the whole weekend. Yep. Cyber Monday is just what's in a name, right? It's a name for a continuation of that weekend just to keep an added boost, because it used to be that physical retail was Black Friday and online was Cyber Monday, but now you do Black Friday online and blah, blah, blah. You don't do Cyber.
I did see some merchants, though, making distinctive offers on Cyber Monday.
Oh, of course.
And there's some merchants who just don't really participate in Black Friday who would take the opportunity to participate in Cyber Monday because it was, it was brand forward. Like it was, they would see participation in Black Friday not being on brand for them. But Cyber Monday, it's online and you've got a little more leeway to do, even things like last chance sales. I see that, of course, now more than ever online.
Well,
for retailers.
If you were ordering for Black Friday and now you feel you may have misjudged that. But as we know too, a lot of the sales are driven by the brands, right? Like the vendors actually providing that. That's the smart way to do it. Cyber Monday, it's a nice touch to put a different name on it, but really you're thinking about what happens in November and December. How do we keep sales going? My own personal view on it is a monster got created. It wasn't that it's a bad idea. It was just the depth and breadth of it and the feeling that everyone had to take part and do deep discounting that early had more net harm than good to the business. Consumers win. And consumers, if you don't get the thing you're looking for Black Friday, you're being trained so well. Like we're so smart if we pay attention to these things. We're going to wait. We'll wait till Cyber Monday. We'll keep waiting because we know it's going to go on sale. So we have trained shoppers now to really drive this game. But I think this year we can't do it. And we can't do it. In some cases, it's because product availability is an issue. In other cases, it might have been a reluctance to make a heavy bet when the ordering had to happen way back then.
That's a great point.
There's going to be campaigns, but the idea of driving, now imagine like how can I'm not singling them out. It's just they're kind of known for this. So Best Buy for Boxing Day or Black Friday, trying to drive people in with the door crashers. How responsible is that? And you can't really even do that. There will be sales campaigns for sure, but they're going to be different. And I think it's going to calm it down a bit. And it does.
It could be. I mean, it's an interesting point, and you and I are going to get back on the microphone on first week of December, and see, and we'll do the post game analysis, because I think this circuit breaker of consumer behavior could be this thing that, as a retailer, sometimes you do get in that cycle of, I got to comp off. I did a deal last year. I got to do a deal this year. I got to do a bit of a better deal this year. I got to comp off. I got to grow a couple of points. And this kind of, will this be a circuit breaker where we go, okay, we went a little too far on Black Friday. As you say, we created more of a monster than we intended. Is this, this collective wisdom that all happens, a lot of very smart people all thinking about the same thing at the same time. Fascinating. So listen, David, this is, as always, we could go on for a long, long time talking about all these issues. I'm going to leave it here for today, but I'm going to book a meeting with you right now. We'll talk about early December. We're going to do post-game analysis, and we're kind of going to see how all this shakes out. But for now, thanks so much for being on the Voice of Retail podcast. Again, it's such a treat, as always, on mic or off mic, to catch up with you. And thanks so much for joining me, and I wish you a safe week.
I love it. It was a lot of fun, as always, and let's chat. And I'll give you one more to keep an eye out for, which is brands maybe purposely sitting out Black Friday, like REI's done in the past and last year. I've heard Walmart might be doing that in the States. So we'll leave that a lot to be determined, and we'll connect again.
Thanks to Jean-Louis and David for being my guests, and Omnovos for their support in this episode. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform, rate and review, and be sure and recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of LeBlanc Company Inc. You can learn more about me on www.leblanc.co, or of course on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.